All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. This is episode 99, believe it or not. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. This is your weekly BIM slash Revit slash technology podcast live stream, whatever you want to call it. And we're actually on episode 99, which is pretty wild. My guest tonight is Nick from Pure Revit, who you guys may also know, who does a live stream usually on Wednesdays, so the day before this. And he's been on the show many, many times. We're going to be talking about formulas and Revit family creation and getting really, really geeky and nerdy about it. For those of you who are here live, thank you for joining me on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you chat as we go along. I will be checking the chat. If you have questions, comments, concerns, I'll be digging in there and making sure I feed those in as we go along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're at 71,000 subscribers, and so we're getting closer and closer to that 100,000. So if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. If you already subscribed, then tell your friends to subscribe, and we'll get ourselves to 100,000, which would be pretty cool. And then last but not least, next week being episode 100, I wanted you guys to reach out to me and give me your ideas on what we should talk about, what we should do, how we should celebrate 100 episodes of this live show. So pretty exciting there. And so without further ado, I am going to bring in our guest of honor, which is Nick from Pure Revit. Nick, welcome to the show, man. Oh, you were muted. You can say hello one more time.
Oh, hello.
There we go. No, you're good.
Okay.
No, I muted you.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if I messed up something on my side.
No, not at all. Nick and I were just talking before we went on how the dangers of live streaming, and sometimes you don't realize some of the things that happen on the produced end of things that are happening on the back end. But
yeah, if you listen to the stream I did yesterday, you will hear a robot voice from me. So
I've done a couple where I had some really cool like background music and sounds that I thought were playing because I heard them, but no one heard them, and so it's probably like awkward silence or something. But it is what it is. So welcome back to the show, man. Before we jump into the content, maybe just give everyone who maybe doesn't know who you are a quick little bio on who you are and what you're doing here and where they can find you.
Sure, I am an architect and BIM specialist based in Quebec City. I'm known as the founder of the learning website Revit Pure that I started in 2016. And since 2021, I've moved fully on my own with my company BIM Pure Productions, where I work as a BIM consultant while creating content and streaming and all sorts of other fun stuff as well.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming back on the show. You've been on the show a few times talking about lots of different things. and when we were sort of brainstorming ideas, this is family creation is something that you have been spending a lot of time doing recently, and so it's clearly hot on your mind. I actually haven't done a ton of it until probably the last week, so it was kind of cool that I started diving myself back into if statements and conditioning and arrays and all kinds of good stuff in families that we decided to set on this topic. So I'm pretty excited for it. So with that, maybe jump into the concept. Let's talk about the content and the concepts. I think the idea tonight is really to let people walk away with not just little gems of information, but also understanding the concepts of what you're talking about. I mean, there's a huge sort of knowledge jump for a lot of people from Revit project environment to Revit family environment to the Revit family with complex formulas and stuff like that, and understanding how those work, I think, is beneficial. So I don't know how you want to start. If you want to just jump right into the content, or if you want to give a little monologue before we jump in, it's up to you.
Yeah, well, I can go with my monologue. Well, I'm currently in the Revit Families rabbit hole, and I tend to get in rabbit hole for specific topics. I think the first time I was on your show, it was the coordinates. So at one point I went to coordinates rabbit hole, then it was railings,
yes.
And then it was groups. And currently I'm all into families, and I want to learn every single thing.
But I got to be honest though. I've noticed there's a trend between like myself and you and Paul Albin and a lot of us who are sharing this knowledge. I feel like there's always a trend between the content we produce and the Revit holes that we've gone down. And it's really funny that you say that, because that makes total sense. And it's funny that whenever you guys come on the show, it's usually when you're in the midst of digging deep into some sort of abyss that is a Revit Revit knowledge. So I appreciate you coming on to share the Revit hole that you're currently in.
Yeah. Are you sharing my screen? I can begin with
go for it, man.
a quick one. like I will start with in a good mood. So the very first secret formula that I want to teach, and it's gonna help you put you in a good mood, help you create better formulas and have fun while doing it. And let me just switch over here. And the first formula is the Negroni Spagliato.
I wish I knew. I would have made a Negroni before we jumped on, man. Bummer.
So a Negroni, typically it's Campari, vermouth, and gin. But the Spagliato, it's sparkly and it's a bit lighter, not as strong as the normal Negroni. So I have all my ingredients right here.
There we
so
go.
I'm gonna very quickly do this. All right. So I have my glass. I'm gonna put a little bit of Campari, and then a little bit of vermouth, and finally the Prosecco on top of it. All right, and with a slice of orange.
Of course.
And it should make the process of creating formulas in Revit Families much more fun. So, that's my first formula. So cheers to everyone.
Cheers, everyone out there. Cheers.
This is really good. Really good. Yeah, it's a bit like the regular Negroni is pretty strong. This is a bit lighter.
The Prosecco helps out, I'm sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect start.
Okay, so
now we're talking. Now we're ready to formulate some formulas. And
all right, now I'm in even better mood. So let's start. So why? As I've been saying, I've been in Revit Families rabbit hole, and these are all the families I've been creating in the last year and a half. I don't know why all my clients I've been working with are asking me for weird families, families with arrays that needs trigonometry formulas, that have nested shared arrayed, nested detail items, multiple layers, and that requires complex formulas. And it would be easy to mess them up. So I had to study formulas to make them even better. And one of the reasons I've been interested in the topic of Revit Family as well is that my experience is that most Revit families that are found online are quite awful. So at this point, I've been roasting this family for a while. I've wrote about it. So I hope this is the Rainer's Masterline. I hope this company doesn't sue me for roasting their family. But it's a family found on BIM Object website, and it's just a terrible example. The family is almost 10 megabytes. There are 282 shared parameters that will pollute your model when you bring it to your project. And when you look at it, there's like, you don't know what's going on. It's like a super family that has thousands of options, but there's no guide. So the user has no way of understanding what's going on there. So I'm trying to do the opposite of that. I'm trying to create families that the users will understand, that are easy to use, that are quite obvious, that are made in a way that are, I'm trying to simplify the life of the end user. That's always my goal when I create families. If you make the life of the end user hell, that's not good, even though technically the family is working. I'm referring to Steve Stafford, who has a great blog article from a while ago. I think he's a former guest, right?
Yeah, Steve has been on the show. He was on the show actually, I think about a year ago. So beginning of 20. I'll put a link to his episode. He actually came on to chat about Revit health monitoring and stuff. And so we actually did talk a little about family size and whatnot. And so he came on the show, and I'm sure, I gotta imagine that everyone out there has at some point in their time either stumbled upon Revit op-ed for his blog or maybe one of his posts on Revit forums. So I hope everyone knows. If you don't know about Steve Stafford, look him up.
But anyway, this is a reference that I got on Steve's blog, and it's to talk about the families. The muscles are the constraints and the parameters, the bones are the reference planes and the lines, and the skin is the geometry. And what I found is that most people want to go very quickly to the skin. They want to model the geometry as fast as they can, but they tend to go pretty quickly for the bones and the muscles. But I think it's critical that you really understand what you're doing for that part, and formulas can help greatly with that. So that's my little intro. And just another point, I've just finished teaching an advanced Revit family strategies with about 25 students. It's super fun. And everything I'm talking about today is kind of a best of parts of this course, but this is like a 12 hours course that I'm working on. I've added the link if you want to go to the waitlist, but honestly, I'm not sure when the next cohort is going to be. Pretty busy for the upcoming
This
months.
episode
but,
won't
who
be
knows?
12 hours long, by the way, everyone.
Yeah. It's a marathon. We're here until the morning.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm ready to share actual tricks now. So the first thing that I want to mention is when writing formulas, using the Revit interface is not always good, especially if the formulas tend to get long. So the first recommendation that I can give is to use the very simple notepad and to write down your formulas over there and then copy and paste them into Revit. And the other option, it's a free tool called the Notepad++. You can download it for free. You can just Google it. Oh yeah, there it is. And it opened my old formulas that I wrote down the last time. And what I like about it, especially when you probably had this issue, right, where you have multiple parentheses and you're trying, then it doesn't work. And you're like, okay, where did I miss a parentheses? Well, if you paste your formula in the Notepad++ and you click on one of the parentheses, you can see the other one over there on the other side.
Yeah,
Then
everyone should install Notepad++ for sure. That program comes in handy in a lot of ways. I have a question though. I'm wondering, and maybe somebody in the chat might know if you don't know, Nick, but because I've also used Notepad++ for years, not just for like HTML stuff, but for Dynamo stuff and for Revit formulas. And for Revit formulas, I've never, so for those of you who haven't used it before, with Notepad++, you can actually set the notepad to a specific coding language. And by doing that, it actually does specific highlighting of statements, and it makes it just easier to read. So I've never found one that fully, like what you're showing there, how it's highlighting the parentheses is great, right? But I've never found a language that is close enough to like the Revit family syntax that'll give you the coloring coding that like other languages have. And so if anyone out there can think of like what base language to use, I know it may not be perfect, but something that gets us close, then let us know in the chat. I don't know if you know, Nick, but out of the box, it's going to do what you're doing, which is awesome. It'll capture parentheses and statements, in a certain way. But if you use like HTML in it, it actually highlights and it takes blocks and it shows you, it colorizes the stuff based on the code. And so I've always wondered if there's a language that's close enough to Revit syntax that would work on there. But
yeah, I haven't found one.
So if someone in the chat has, that'd be really cool. But go on. Your tip is still very valid here, which is when you select the parentheses, it's going to show you the final parentheses, which is awesome.
Yeah, okay. One of the problem is when you have really long parameter names and stuff like this. If you enter in a family and the parameter is called distance between the doors, I hate of the small random stuff. And actually what I recommend when I'm create families, I tend to use really short, maybe just one letter. When I create the formulas, it makes it much easier. But when you rename the parameters, you don't have to change the formulas. They will be automatically updated. Maybe I can give a quick example. So I'm using Revit 2024, by the way, with the dark mode.
Which is still, I'm still on the fence about it, but I love dark mode for most programs. So
but as you can see, like the family types menu is still white, so they haven't completed the job.
Progress.
So let's say that I add a new parameter, and then I call it height for the sake of BIM after dark. So a really long parameter, and you're like, oh, I don't want to have to type this. Well, something that you could do, let me just copy this. I will just rename this to A. And then, for example, let's say that at the depth, I need to use this parameter. I can type it like this. And then I can click on the pencil icon and paste the old parameter name like this. And in the formula, you don't have to change it. It will be automatically modified. So I find this quite helpful.
So just to reiterate, anyone who didn't get that tip, super useful there. If you create a parameter, just use A or X or something like that, do your formulas. And if you rename that original parameter, it actually renames it in the formula for you, which is awesome. So very cool tip. Awesome.
And a tip on the same topic is that you can, most people don't know this, but you can select the parameter name in the column. You can copy and paste it, which I didn't know for a very long time. So I was forced to type it over and over again. If it's short parameter, it's not a big deal. But in this case, like, oh man, I don't want to have to type this.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe in the formula, you kind of have to scroll to find it. But you can just click here and copy and paste it like this.
I don't know if I ever even
which
thought
makes
of
it
doing
really
that.
easier. Uh-huh.
Maybe I don't know. I actually don't even know if I knew that. That's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever had parameters that long, but
Yeah. It's kind of a worst case. I don't recommend
yeah.
using this kind of name for the parameter name. Okay, so something to avoid or at least try to limit. And I don't know why, but for a long time I used dash in my parameter names because I don't like spaces for some reason. And then I made peace with spaces because of the issue. But the dash is a math symbol. It's the minus sign, right? So Revit is confused because like, oh yeah, are you trying to type a parameter name or are you trying to use a math operator, the minus sign? So if you try, for example, here a parameter dash and I use a formula, you will get a warning like this. And the way that you can solve this, well, first you can either remove the dash by renaming the parameter, or you could use brackets. So if you use brackets, you can type the parameter name, even if it has a dash or other math symbols, and it will work fine. So if I'm going to Revit and I create a new parameter, I've never tried with the plus sign. Let's try it with the plus sign. And let's say that this one is equal to parameter plus dash plus 1 feet, for example, as it's confused because he thinks the name of the parameter is parameter. It's not.
Plus so another parameter named dash.
Exactly. So I am having the wrong keyboard. Okay. So what the first thing you can do is use brackets. So I can use brackets, and now it's going to work. And something interesting is if you remove the math symbol over there. So let's say I remove this. Like the brackets are automatically removed.
Oh, that's weird. Not sure if I like that, but
Yeah, but then if you change it and I put it back,
then if you change it to the brackets, do they go back?
Yeah, they go back. Pretty sure, at least. Yeah, the brackets go back. So Revit's pretty smart with that. When you rename parameters, it will make it work. So you don't have to worry about this.
Nice. Somebody in the chat said if you use Visual Studio Code as the language for Notepad++, it might help. But that's interesting. So if anyone out there wants to try it out, go for it.
All right, I'll have to try it as well. Okay.
Awesome. So brackets. If you guys have pluses, minuses, division, multiplication, anything in your parameter names, which generally as a rule we don't suggest anyways, but if you do, if you have to have it, then you can use brackets, which is awesome. And then Revit won't think that it's a math syntax.
All right, so now these were some usability tips. Now we're going to explore some of the formulas. So here are some math operators. I mean, equal, less than, greater than. Everyone's familiar with that. And then there are the if statements. I'm sure most people are familiar with that. I've used that a few times. Then there's the and, the or, and the not statements. So we're going to play a little bit with that. And specifically, we're going to talk about the visibility parameter, or the yes/no parameters, because I found that a lot of people are confused about how to create formulas for visibility parameters. And people tend to use if formulas inside of visibility parameters, but it's not necessary at all, because visibility parameter has a binary outcome, yes or no. So using an if statement is redundant. You just need to type in the condition if it's yes, basically. An example here, if we have an extrusion and it's only visible if it's smaller, the depth is smaller than 500 millimeters. So that's the simple formula in this case. That's it. You don't have to use an if statement. Super simple formula. So let's go over here. Do I have a visibility parameter? Not yet. So let me quickly add the visibility parameter for this shape. Extrusion visibility. Okay, so going here, I do have my extrusion visibility. It's a yes/no parameter, as you can see with the checkbox. And here, no, don't type if statements. You don't need to. So let's say that I want this to be only visible if the depth is smaller than 3 feet. So yeah, it is, because the depth is currently 4 feet, right? But then if I switch like this, it's visible again. So very simple way to use these visibility parameters formulas.
That's a great tip. So I think we all get into that immediately when you think of this or that, you always think of an if statement, right? Because the if statement is very simple. Here's the condition. If it's true, yes. If it's true, no. But like you said, a visibility parameter, which is just a checkbox, only has a yes or no. So that's a nice way to clean up your families, guys. Is you don't necessarily have to do a complete if statement,
exactly,
because you already have a yes no. So why not, right?
The if statement is redundant. I mean, it can still work in this case.
It still 100% works, but to your point, it's yeah.
So in this case, you could type something like this, and then you have to type like 1 equal 1, or else it 1 equal 2. So that would give you the same result, but the formula is longer and it's harder to understand. So I don't use this. There's no point in using this. So just use this instead.
Awesome.
Okay. And the and statement, you can add multiple conditions. We're going to keep going with the visibility parameters. So in this case, let's say that this extrusion should be visible not only if the depth is smaller than 3 feet, but what else could we add? So, and I'm going to type and parentheses, the first condition, and then I can add a comma and write as many conditions as I need. So in this case, for example, the length should be greater than 2 feet. So both conditions must be met. So let's say that we play around with this, and the length is, like I will remove all these formulas for now. So the depth is smaller. Yeah, now it's visible because the both conditions are met. So that's an and statement. So if you have multiple conditions, especially for visibility parameters or any yes/no parameters, that works great.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, I'm just going to stress these tips as we go through because I think it's great for people. So that the and both conditions have to be met. So it can't be one or the other. It has to be the and. So that's what you're saying there. So if you changed the width to greater than 4 feet or whatever it was, unless the length changed, it's not going to change it. So that's the key with the and, is that you need to and what's cool in there, and then you mentioned, is that you can build in actually a lot of conditions in ands.
Exactly.
In and.
Yeah.
But to some extent, don't build in too many. But yes, you can build in a bunch.
Yeah. Okay. This is the and statement, and the or statement is, well, you can guess what it does. Only one of the conditions must be met for this thing to be visible. So if we go back to the family, right now it is visible, but let's say that we move the length to is greater than, okay, let's put this at 4 feet. You can see currently it's not visible, but if I switch it to or instead, now it is visible because the condition of the depth is met because it's smaller. It's smaller than 3 feet. No, it's not. The length is above 2 feet. So if I was to put it at 1 feet, now it's not visible because none of these conditions are met.
So now I'm going to ask you a question, because I know I get this question all the time, which is, what if it's equal to 2 feet? What does Revit do? Because there's no greater than equal to.
I'm getting there.
Man, look at that. I didn't even see this slide.
Okay, so I'll skip. Okay, I'll quickly do this one.
Okay, fine.
And then I'll move to the question. So not is the last one, and especially for visibility parameters, if you have two options, I'm sure a lot of you have used this in the past. If you have two visibility options, using the not can quickly give you a result without having. So let's say that vis2 is only visible if vis1 is not. So I can just type in here not and the name of the other visibility parameter. So not extrusion visible, and if I put this above 3, like it's always the opposite. So these two visibility parameters cannot be both yes at the same time.
And that's regardless of if there's an and or an or above. It's just looking at the resultant, right?
Exactly.
Of the first one, and it's just
only
saying,
the result.
It's just saying by not, it's saying I want to always be the opposite of whatever that guy is.
Someone says I'm having trouble seeing your screen.
Oh, okay. Maybe the formulas may be kind of small on their end. So maybe when you're in the
I can
Revit side, maybe just control zoom in.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, a tip for people who don't know, you can control zoom in.
Just get ready, everyone, for the awful column organization of Revit when you zoom.
Okay.
It's I think it's just those parameter fields get pretty small. So
Yeah, because I record tutorial, I put the zoom in Windows at 100%. I know you can put it bigger, so to
Yeah.
make all the text big as well. But when recording, it's better like this. Anyway, I hope it's better for the sake of visibility. So let's
Yeah, I think it
keep
must be.
on
It's
going.
got to be.
Okay, now let's talk about greater than or equal. And I've learned that from Brenton, who I think is sponsoring the show, or
Yep.
maybe previous episodes of the show, and who has been on my show as well, and has done some great work and research as well from Families. I've learned a lot from him. And so if you want to use a greater than or equal, the tip, so because you cannot use the symbol. The symbol doesn't work in Revit, which sucks. So I
Does suck.
should email the team and let them know that it should work. Why not? I mean, it shouldn't be that complicated to program. Anyway, so if you want to do this, you have to type not and then type the opposite of it. So let's try it out inside of Revit. So let's say that, and then I can combine R, not, and N and mix them together. So in this case, let's say that I want smaller than or equal to 3 feet. I will type not, and then I will reverse. Instead of being smaller than, it's going to be bigger than, and I'm going to end the parentheses. And if I put it exactly, so let's say that I revert this at 1 feet. So you can see right now it is not active because none of these conditions are met. But if I put it exactly at 3 feet, now it works. And it wouldn't have worked before. So that's the way that you can use the workaround for greater than or equal, or smaller than or equal.
No, that's great. I think we should just remind everyone of that again. So when you want to do greater than or equal to, and here's the thing: you want to use a not, and then in parentheses you want it to be the reverse of what you're looking for. I know it's confusing, but that's how it works.
It can be confusing. Like just type not at the parentheses and reverse the greater than or equal sign,
right. And then don't think about it anymore.
Yeah, don't think about it. Yeah, and move on.
All right, before we move on to the next one, I think maybe because you mentioned Brenton, maybe it's a great opportunity to throw in his ad, and we'll talk a little bit about that, especially since we're about family creation. So let's just roll the ad real quick, and then we'll jump into the next one. So I thought it was perfect timing to throw in the ad right there. So Brenton Weiberg, who was on the show a couple weeks ago, was kind enough to sponsor this entire season of BIM After Dark Live. But not only sponsor the season, but also offer you guys 20% off any of his family bundles. And so head on over to revitfamily.biz, use offer code RevitKid23, and support those who support this show. And definitely, at a bare minimum, just buy one of his family bundles so you can just see how he builds them, because as Nick mentioned, Brenton has also spent a lot of time building families, and he has some fantastic ways to go about some of these problems. So thanks, Brenton, and thanks for throwing him in the slide deck without me even realizing it was perfect timing for the ad there, Nick.
Yeah, what a great timing! And during the ad, I had time to refill.
You had time to refill your Negroni.
Spaglietto.
Oh, sorry, Spaglietto Negroni, right?
Yeah, I've learned that Spaglietto means mistake in Italian, because it's like a mistake to put in Prosecco instead of gin. So just a little bit of information.
Awesome. All right, let's jump right into it, man. Let's do it.
Okay, so you can get pretty wild with formulas like this. So we've used the and, the or, and the not separately, but you can combine them like this. So for example, we want the width to be greater than or equal to the test value and the depth, and you can just combine them. And by using the parentheses, Notepad++ can be helpful for that. This is the best way to use visibility parameters, complicated formulas. And again, I don't recommend using if statements for visibility parameters. There's no point. Everything you can do with if statements, you should be able to do by not using if statements and using and, not, or something else. No, all these three statements should be enough for the visibility parameters. Okay, now let's move on to if statements. So let's move a little bit away from the visibility parameters. I don't think I will teach you how to use the basic if. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with it. If not, well, quickly, if you type an if statement, first you enter the condition. For example, the depth is greater than 500 millimeters. Then comma, the result if true, comma, the result if false. So pretty straightforward. But I wanted to teach a few cool, interesting tips with dimensions. One of them that I've learned, and I've used very frequently with my family now, it's to protect the dimensions. Because sometimes you don't want users to use specific dimensions, either because it will break the family or because they're not allowed, or maybe you have a window and there are specific sizes and else it's going to get too big. The window doesn't work anymore past certain dimensions. And by using the if statement, you can solve that issue and force users to use specific dimensions. So in this case, you can see we have to create two parameters. Like, let's say that we want to use this for the depth. You have to create the user depth and the actual depth parameter. And the actual depth is going to be used to control the geometry. And the user depth is going to be the one that users can change. So if I go back to Revit.
And while you're jumping back into Revit, I think it's important to point out the reason now we're jumping into an if statement versus the not or the and or the ors or what we're talking about there is because it's no longer a Boolean. It's no longer a true or false value. We can actually have, it's a dimension, let's say, so the resultant can be a range of values, and that's why it doesn't make sense to use the not, because it's not so black and white anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a binary outcome. There are multiple outcomes, and it's not yes and no.
Right. So, I wanted to say that because I didn't want people to think, oh my god, I should never use an if statement again. We're just
it's only for visibility parameters.
Right. It makes sense. You know that there's no reason to use it for the visibility parameters. That's all. Wanted to point that out.
I want to be clear. I love if statements. So
there you go.
I'm on the record now. Okay, so I have my depth. I'm actually going to go back here and rename depth, and I'm going to call this actual depth, and I'm going to create a new parameter that's going to be called user depth. So the user depth is the one that users will have access to, and actual depth is the one that is going to control the geometry. So in the slide, so in this example, if you look at the formula, the if statement, we don't want this geometry for the depth to be below 500 millimeters, and we don't want it to be above 1500 millimeters. So in this case, we need to nest an if statement because, well, first it verifies if the value is too low, and if it is, it sets it to the minimum value, and then it verifies if the value is too high, and if it's too high, it reverses it to the maximum value, and else, if it's in between, it uses the value that the user typed in. So if I go back to Revit, first let me enter a value for user depth over here. So I'm going to type this formula for the actual depth. And am I zoomed in enough? I hope so.
Look at those columns. Oh, it drives me nuts, man. The second you start zooming into that, I don't know what they did with the UI, but it just, unfortunately, you'll never, ever get the columns to work again.
And it moves, and it's really annoying.
Yep.
It jumps.
Yep.
So if user depth is smaller than 500 millimeters, make it 500 millimeters instead. And if not, we're going to nest another if statement. If user depth is bigger than 1500 millimeters. Oh no, this will not work. I'm using feet. Okay. It's totally a Canadian thing here to switch between the units.
Yeah, what are you doing? Imperial? What is this?
Okay, let's say that's 2 feet then. So the minimum is 2 feet. And the maximum user depth, let's say, so 1500. How much is it? Like 4, let's say it's 6 feet or 5 feet. If user depth is above 5 feet, put it at 5 feet. Else, you're going to use the value that the user entered. And then 2 parentheses, and that's it. So currently you can see that the value is 3 feet because it's in between the range. So let's say that I put 2 foot 6 inches. This works as well. However, let's say that I put 1 foot in there. You can see that the formula, that's really annoying that I have to scroll. But the formula is set it's back at 2 feet, right? And if I put 6 feet, it puts it at 5. So I've set minimum and maximum values by using nested if statements and by creating 2 parameters for the depth.
And if you were to just so people can see, if you were to put 3'7", for example, it'll let them do 3'7" because it's within the range that you're allowing them to do, and that's the whole point of this.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm curious if you put 3 millimeters in there, or if you put millimeters and feet in the. That's
a good question.
Does it blow up the syntax or no?
No, it just
I didn't think
converts
so.
it to.
I was just gonna say I didn't think it would.
It converts. Yeah,
it converts it.
It doesn't break it, but it converts it to weird values.
Awesome.
Okay,
blowing people's minds, flipping between imperial and metric.
Yeah, we do that all the time in Canada, so I'm used to it. I use this all the time on multiple families. This is super helpful, especially if sometimes the family breaks when you have certain dimensions. So it's a good way to protect the families as well.
There's a question actually that's pretty timely within this, so I figured I'd jump it in. It's from John, and he said, "Do you do anything to hide your controlling parameters?" So I guess when you're doing something like this, where you have a user input and then you have the controlling parameter, which the controlling parameter you can't access unless you go into the family. So let's start there, right? The second you put a formula in there, it's not accessible in the project environment. But I guess the question then is, are you hiding that from the user somehow? Whether it's by moving it to a different category. I think he mentioned putting it as a shared parameter just to hide it, which I've never thought of. I'm not sure I would want to do that.
Yes, I didn't plan to talk about it because it's a whole other topic. But yes, in my rabbit hole of digging deep into Revit families, I've learned that you can hide parameters. But okay, it's a first thing that I would recommend in this case, the actual depth, I will click on the pencil icon and group parameter under other. So that's the first basic step. And all the dimensions that can be controlled, that the user can actually change and is encouraged to change in a project, I put them in dimensions. And all the parameters that I don't want the user to touch at all, I would put them into other. And that's the first step. And then, I don't have droots installed on because it's Revit 2024. But if you use a shared parameter and you open the shared parameter in Excel, there's a column that says visible, and you can set it to 0, and the parameter becomes invisible when the family is loaded into the project. It's only visible in the family editor.
But that has to be a shared parameter.
It has to be a shared parameter, yes.
Interesting. And so then in the shared parameter file, you're using that visibility setting, right?
Yeah, maybe I should just show it. Right?
If you want, you don't have to, but
okay. I will create a project by using the new multidiscipline template. Okay, so the first thing I'll create a new shared parameter file. So let me create a new file. I guess I'll put it on the desktop, and I'll just call it bad. And here I'll call it actual depth. No, that's the group. Okay, actual depth. And it's a length type of parameter. And now I have to open Excel and open, what's this?
Wherever you put it.
I put it on didn't I save this file on the desktop? Yeah, I'm having trouble with my desktop recently because of OneDrive.
I was just gonna say, you didn't even have to say it. I was gonna say, let me guess, OneDrive.
Where is it? Is it gone? Oh man, that's so annoying. Or maybe okay. No, I just have to. Yeah, okay. There you go. But I still, regardless, I have having trouble with my desktop because of is there a way to turn off OneDrive? And then think about it, it's so annoying.
I've actually, I went into a hole with OneDrive, and now I'm very confident with that beast. But there's a lot of things you got to learn with OneDrive to actually successfully use it without throwing yourself through a window. But it can be a very, very awesome synchronization tool and a great, but it takes a long time to figure out what you should.
Because I use Google Drive, and so all my files that I want to sync, put them on the drive, and then OneDrive is kind of redundant, but I haven't turned it off anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so
could probably
anyway,
do a whole episode on OneDrive and SharePoint and servers because I went down that rabbit hole about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got your shared parameter file open in Excel now.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a text file. So you must set to see all files to open it. And then here I have my parameter. By the way, it's not something that I recommend that you casually do open the shared parameter file in Excel, because if you mess up with this GUID number, you might kind of break something. So make a copy of it and talk to your BIM manager. I'm not responsible if you break something. But anyway, here there's the column that says visible. And here I'm going to switch this to 0. Okay. And I'm going to save this file. And I'm going to close it. And now, and something really cool that most people don't know about, you can create all your parameters as family parameters. But then if you decide, oh, actually, I need a shared parameter, I need to schedule it or I need to tag it, you can click it on, which one? Oh, yeah, the actual depth parameter. Click on the pencil icon and then select share parameter. And then I can select my actual depth over here. And yeah, so like right now, everything seems to be the same, except if I was to load this family into project number 1. No. And I place it. Okay, and if I go over here, you cannot see it. You cannot see the parameter. It's hidden. So it's only visible inside of the family. That's pretty cool, right?
That is cool. It's kind of scary and sneaky, but it's also pretty cool. I do have to say it's a neat. I mean, I guess that's actually pretty cool.
Except, so the one downside to it that I found, if you create a new schedule over here, and this is a generic model, since it is a shared parameter, you're gonna see it here. So which doesn't make sense, but it's a shared parameter. So
yeah, which I guess it makes sense. That's cool. So there you go. That's how you can hide a parameter. You have to make it shared and turn its visibility to 0 with caution.
Exactly.
I do have a whole episode on shared parameters I did last year that I could link down below if you guys want. If you guys don't know what we're talking about with shared parameters, and I ran through the whole gamut of what the hell Nick just did there with shared parameters, because I know some people who haven't touched that might be like, what the hell was all that? So I'll put a link to that down below.
Yeah, I'm assuming that people watching this video have kind of a basic knowledge of families. If not, like go back, watch some basic family tutorials and come back. Because these are some more advanced concepts for sure. Intermediate to advanced, let's say. Okay, we did that. Okay, let's talk about text values. Another rabbit hole that I went into, trying to use text in if statements. Okay, so let's talk about using text as the result. So let's say that I'm using fruit a lot in the following slides. So let's say that I create a new parameter that is called favorite fruit, and it's going to be a text type of parameter. And for example, here I could use a formula that says if, then I can type my condition, if depth is, I'm going to zoom in a little bit once again, even if it messes up my whole, what the hell is that?
By the way, once you zoom in, just so everyone knows, the only way that I've figured out how to refresh that is to close and reopen Revit. The second you zoom in that dialogue, you're done for that session, as far as I can tell.
Okay, so let's say that the condition is depth is greater than 2 feet, and then you can type in quotation mark the name of the fruit, if that's the case, or any text, of course, and then comma, and if the result is below 2 feet, then you can type in another fruit name, strawberry, like this. Yeah, of course, this is, let's use actual depth. There you go. So right now it's banana. If the family won't allow me. So I put this at 2 feet. You can see automatically the text changes. And by the way, a cool thing that maybe people don't know about, if you place a 3D text, I know some people doing facility management like to place 3D text in their families, like for the unique number, because they don't change, the text size doesn't change with the scale of the view.
Right.
So if you place a 3D text, you can click here on the small rectangle and map this parameter to a text parameter. So in this case, I can map it to favorite fruit, and the fruit is going to be displayed, and it's going to update automatically based on this formula. So if I change this to Which parameter? I don't remember. Okay, this one. If I put it to 4 feet and I click on apply, you can see the name of the text has changed over there.
So the takeaway there too, what you're showing is by pulling from the actual depth parameter, which was the formula-based parameter, it lets you do the math, or it let you take a numerical value or a dimension and use it in a text string, right? Is that
exactly? Yeah.
Because if you went directly to the depth, that would be inconsistent units and syntax error and all those lovely things, right? But because you're pulling out the actual depth, which is really just a formula, right? Then Revit's allowing you to use that information to push into a text parameter, which is pretty cool.
Exactly. Well, this is the condition, right? This is the condition, the first one,
Right.
and these are the two possible results. The possible results are text, and you can put them in parentheses. So all good. But then I'm going to talk about what I don't like about the family determiner is that you cannot use the if statement as a condition. You cannot use a text as a condition. So for example, I'm trying to, in this case, if the favorite vegetable is onion, then the favorite fruit is orange, else it's banana. Or I could do the same thing. For example, let's say if the text is banana, for example, this length value, if banana, in this case, it would be if favorite fruit is equal to banana, the length, it's going to be 2 feet, else it's going to be 5 feet. I mean, that would make sense, right? Why? But if I tap enter, improper use of Boolean expression, why?
Because you can't use text.
This bothers me. Exactly, but there's no reason anyway. So I wish you could, but you cannot currently. So that doesn't work. However, there are workarounds. So I've explored them all. There are 3 possible workarounds for this. You can nest like I did earlier. I think I'm going to skip this slightly. So one of the possibility is to use an integer to represent each text value. Okay, so I'll repeat that. You can assign a number that represents each possible text that you have. And this way you can use text as a condition, but by using an integer instead. So for example, the fruit integer, this is where I'm going to type all the constraints. For example, let's say that the orange is 0, and the banana is 1, and the strawberry is 2. And then I'm using the fruit integer parameter here to type my actual dimension constraints. And then I can use this fruit integer elsewhere to use it to drive other dimensions. Okay, so I'll do it. So I will create a new parameter by clicking on this icon, and in data type I will select where is it? Integer right there. And I'm going to call this fruit integer. So my fruit integer is right here. In this case, it's going to be if actual depth is, well, I type in bigger than 3 feet. The integer is going to be 0. Else, I'm going to type another nested if statement. If actual depth is bigger than 5, it's going to be 1. Else, it's going to be 2. And now I have a number over here. So actual depth, where is it? Over actual depth. Actual depth is bigger than 3 feet. It should be 0. Okay, so if I make it smaller, you can see that this number changed. Although currently this, like, I would actually, I could add an and statement, because right now it doesn't make sense. So it would have to be a range, right? So actual depth is anyway, I would have to see. My brain is a little too much Negroni spaghetto, I think.
Yeah, right. So you nested 2 if statements in there to make your range, it looks like.
Exactly. Well, you could
Or
put a
are you
range.
using the visibility there? I mean, yeah, that's one way. Yeah.
Exactly. You could put in a range of a formula, or you could also only use two possible options. So in this case, it's going to be 0 or 1. So only two options. If you need more than two options, you can use another nested if, an additional one. And now I can use this. So for example, I know that, and here I could use if fruit integer is equal 0, it's going to be the banana, else it's going to be the strawberry. And that's the way I can control this parameter, the favorite fruit. And now, for example, if I need to drive the length based on the text value, well, I can use this fruit integer instead by saying, for example, if fruit integer is equal to 1, the dimension should be 1 feet, else it's going to be 4 feet. So it's a workaround.
Right.
It adds this step of adding this parameter, the fruit integer, but it allows you to, it's a workaround to use text in a different way.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's awesome.
All right, I'm seeing the time fly, and I think I should finish with the lookup tables. What do you think about this?
I think so. I think that's cool. I think that's something that not a lot of people have talked about. I'm trying to think of out of the 99 episodes so far, I think there might have been only one episode where we talked about lookup tables, and I think it might have been one with Paul Aubin a long time ago. So I think it's definitely some value to jump into those. So do it, man. Let's do it.
So even by using this integer technique, the limitation that you have is each time there's a different condition, you need to boost the formula and add an additional nested if statement. And if you have 10 possible favorite fruit, for example, you could have 9 nested if statements, which creates a crazy formula. So the workaround in this case would be to use a lookup table. And the lookup table is a CSV file that you can create in Excel, and that is using this format. You can just copy this. And basically what this is doing, there's a GIF over here that showcases what it does, is that there's, for example, in this case, I'm using a number to drive all the other parameters. And this number is trying to find, we'll use the column number B. And for example, if I'm using the number 7, it's going to use this text. So mango, for example, in the X, this column, the X value is going to be 1500 millimeters, and the Y is going to be 1800 millimeters. So by using a value, you can pick other columns on the same row. So if you have a lot of dimensions, this can be super helpful. I think at first it was used mostly for engineers for, the name of the formula is size lookup. So it was for piping dimensions or HSS, structural columns dimensions.
Yep.
To make it faster to create multiple types, especially if you have a collection of Excel spreadsheets and you want to quickly create the types in Revit, it can be a way to do it along with the family types, which is a whole other topic as well. And so, yeah, there's a handout that should come with this presentation. Hoping that Jeff gives you the link. So you can, I might not have enough time to go deeply into lookup tables, but yeah, the idea is that the formula is going to look for this column, and when it finds the number, it's going to find the good value for the X parameter, the Y parameter, and the text as well.
So I think we have a minute, maybe if you just want to show people
yes,
where it is, or at least how to sort of start the setup to it. I think it'll be a useful time of a few minutes here, if you've got an example or something simple that you can create. I don't know.
I should totally do it for this exercise. So I will create a new spreadsheet, and let's say what example should I use? What about, since we're talking about cocktails, we could type the name of cocktail in Manhattan. What else? So let's say. Okay, so we have names of cocktail, and actually I will move them because here the first cell, A1, it should be empty all of the time. Okay, and here you don't type anything. Then this one, the column B, is going to be the key, so the one that Revit's going to look for. So in this case, we can simply use a number. You could use a dimension as well. You can use any type of parameter. So I'm going to call this cocktail ID. And then the way it works, you have to type in the hashtag symbol, the pound, twice. And then I tend to forget it. So let's, so this is a number and this is a general. So I'll go back to the Excel spreadsheet.
So that's the type of parameter and then the units
Number.
or something like that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yep.
It's similar to when you export a family type file. It's the same formatting. And then I'll type something that doesn't make sense, but let's say cocktail. I'm gonna use, let's call this cocktail dimension. I mean, is there an ounce unit in Revit? Maybe there is.
I don't think so, but maybe there. No, I don't think there is.
Okay. Yeah, is it gonna mess it up if I'm using? I can switch to units, so I'll still type millimeters in this case.
Yeah, that's fine. Because I don't even know what you would type for feet and inches or what.
And I always get the spelling wrong in millimeters, so I'll just verify if it's right. Okay, seems fine. So in this case, I can type here the numbers. It's just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's kind of the unique key that's going to unlock all the other values. And let's say then the dimension, I'm going just to put random values. But of course, I just use the cocktail for fun, but you can imagine like any door or any building components for the family you're creating. All right, so my the lookup table is done. I'm going to save it on the desktop. And I must make sure to save it as a CSV file. So comma delimited file. I'm placing it on the desktop. And then I can close it. Actually, I might need it, but for now, I will go here and I'll go to Manage Lookup Table, click on Import, and I will import this file that is called
Book 1. You didn't say. I don't think you changed the name.
Book 1.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called Book 1.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called Book 1. Then I'm going to create a new parameter. And I know I'm going fast because we're going to not have enough time, but the instructions are there in the handout if you want to try by yourself. So I will create a new text parameter for the lookup name. And here in the formula, it's going to be called Book 1. So the same name as the CSV file. And I will create a new text parameter that is called, let's start with the length parameter actually. And this is going to be the cocktail dimension. And just quickly, I will change all the units from this project to millimeters. Just make sure I don't screw up. I'm sure it would work anyway, but just to be extra safe, I'm using millimeters now. Okay, all good. So I have my cocktail dimension. And now I always forget how to use this formula, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's size lookup. Okay, so I will type in size lookup, size_lookup. Then parentheses. And then I must type in the name of the parameter, lookup name, where the name of the CSV file is located. So in this case, it is lookup name. Then I add a comma. And then I must type in the column that I want to use in this one. So let's quickly open the CSV file once again, the book 1. And in this case, I want to use column C, which is called cocktail dimensions. I will just quickly copy this and paste it into Revit. Do I need to type in? Yeah, like this. Okay, so that's the second condition. The third one is, I'm not even sure. Okay, is the value, if the value is not found, if Revit is looking for a number, doesn't find it, what is the default value it's going to use? So in this case, I'm going to use, 10 millimeters. And finally, I need to type in the key, which is this one. But I think I need to create a parameter for that, which I did probably skip, trying to save some time. Yet there's, for example, here, it's VP number. So that's the name of a parameter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because it's going to break the formula, I'm going to copy the formula. Control X, in fact, cut it. And I'm going to create a new parameter that is called, how did I call it? Cocktail key. So I'm creating a new parameter, text, no, it's a number. A number parameter called cocktail key. And then I can type 1, for example, and then I can paste this formula back. I know that's a lot of steps. It's okay if you're not following. There's the handout. And then I can use my cocktail key. Here, hoping it works. It seems to work. So you can see the cocktail dimension. The value is 1. It's 50 milliliters. If I switch this to number 2, it's 400. If I go to 3, 500. To 4, 600. So yeah, that's the power of the lookup table. You just need to change one parameter and the rest is changed. And I can do it as well for the cocktail name. This is going to be a text parameter. So cocktail name, I'll just copy and paste this formula. But I need to change a few things. The last thing, the cocktail key is the same, lookup name is the same. But in this one, if I want to use the first column, that's a workaround, you can just type in nothing, just the quotation mark. And then here, since I'm using a text value, I'm just going to type in no cocktail. So if it doesn't find the key, it's just going to say no cocktail, and the rest is the same. So right now it says old fashioned. If I type in 3, it says martini, Manhattan, Negroni. And if I type 0, for example, it doesn't find it, and it says no cocktail. And you can see the cocktail dimension is 10 millimeters, which is the default value that we've typed here.
That's awesome. I think there was, hopefully everyone followed what's happening there. So it's using the CSV file. It's searching. It's doing, if anyone's familiar with Excel lookup tables, it's basically doing that, right? It's looking for the column, looking for the result. There was a question in the chat about the difference between a lookup table and a type catalog. And I think you just kind of showed it there, right? It's the type catalog is saving the values of all those parameters for that type. The lookup table is actually using that data to input parameters within it. There was another question that I think was a good one, which I think also might say the difference between a type catalog and a lookup table, which is, do lookup tables get embedded in families, or those have to live with the family, the CSV file?
No, that's what's great about lookup tables. It's a very small file. The CSV file, it's like 1 kilobytes. And it's included inside of the family once it's imported. So you don't have to send it. If you have a family with lookup table, it's included inside of family.
Right. That's awesome. And I think it was John or somebody who asked the question. So thanks for the question, man. That was awesome. And actually, Paul Aubin just jumped on, and we just mentioned you, Paul. You missed it. I said out of the 99 previous episodes, I think you were the only one who mentioned lookup tables. And I think it was that episode where we did that crazy symbol stuff, that symbol hack or whatever. So awesome. Man, Nick, this was great. Lots of incredible tips. We burned through a whole bunch of stuff in this hour, and I know you've got lots more. So what I'm going to do is make sure that in the description below we put links of how people can download this handout, how they can dig into the resources, and get a hold of you and reach out to you. And any final words before we wrap up?
Yeah, can I mention a few other things quickly?
Of course.
Yeah, there are a few more slides. I think you'll get access to the handout. For example, I had this slides, which I'm using color code to explain clearly how the lookup table is used. I think that could be helpful. So I'm mapping the formula, matching the right colors with the right columns. So if I know I went a little fast, ideally I spend a bit more time explaining how to use the formula. But in the handouts, you can try it out by yourself, and the instructions are a bit more clear. And yeah, I have a few more tricks in there, some rounding, even some trigonometry. Sadly, I didn't have time to go there. A few more things that I wanted to mention. As I've said, I've taught a cohort-based course, which was with about 25 students. I've done it once before the new year, and I've just finished cohort number 2. And I'm thinking about doing another one, maybe this year. If I have enough time, I'll see. So if you're interested, here's the link. It's on the platform called Maven, which is all other cohort-based course. And it's a pretty good platform, I would say, for that. Everything is made for this kind of course. And I've had a blast, and I think students appreciated it. If you like this hours, I've got like 12 hours of this kind of content. and also includes exercise and sample files.
Awesome.
And handouts and many other stuff. And finally, I have a sale that is ending tomorrow for everything on the Revit Pure website, especially this bundle that you can get for a pretty big discount. It's at revitpure.com/bundle, or you can get 30% off all the courses and on the pro template by using code SPRING2023 at checkout. So this sale is ending tomorrow. Lots of courses and good stuff.
Great. Awesome. And I'll put, like I said, I'll put links below for the cohort if you're interested, as well as the bundles. Thanks again, Nick. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us today. You can reach out to Nick at revitpure.com or at revitpure on Twitter. I'll make sure all his links are below. This has been awesome. I think everyone really enjoyed all the tips. I know I did, and little refreshers, as well as the cocktail recipe. And you guys, again, next week is episode 100. So comment on the video below and give me some ideas of what we should do to celebrate episode 100 next week. Any final words before we wrap up, Nick?
Thanks for having me. And I think the most important tip was how to make the Negroni spaghetto. So
next time you come on, I'm gonna have them. We'll both make one live. How about that?
All right. Yeah. Thanks for hosting me. This was super fun.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, as always, man. I appreciate it. And you guys, again, thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. I'll see you next week for the final episode of this season. Thanks to Brenton over at revitfamily.biz. Remember to use offer code RevitKid23 to save on any of his bundles and so on and so forth. And with that, have an awesome night, guys, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.